Welcome to the #1 show and the source of truth for all things MedTech. Here, we reveal the secrets and stories behind the investments, science, and commercialization of the MedTech industry. Every week, we'll take you on a wild ride with the biggest names in the game, from entrepreneurs and investors who are shaking up the market to healthcare providers who are revolutionizing the way we think and practice medicine. So hold on tight and get ready for a journey like no other. This is the State of MedTech. What is up, Red Hat gang? We got another fantastic President's Club episode. I'm loving these series because, it's just great talking to people who have won multiple President's Club and just seeing the difference in terms of their approaches, their mindset. You will notice a theme here of discipline, creativity, and just, persistence and grit. So today we have Heath Chapman. Heath Chapman is a good friend of mine. He's actually a member of the Medical Sales Network Effects program. And again, if you're interested in joining that program, since you're listening to this President's Club episode, I offer a massive discount into that program, which includes content, a private group with VPs, CEOs, and other reps, plus weekly calls where you can pretty much talk to me almost every week. Ask me any questions you want. So check the show notes below. You click that link. It's going to apply, I think, a 40 or 50% discount. It's the biggest discount I've applied for these things. Take advantage of it. It's not going to be up for forever. And I really look forward to having you into that program. So Heath is principal at S3 Medical. S3 Medical is a distributorship and a really interesting one because aside from carrying things like implants and other disposables, they actually specialize in best-in-class and niche products. Specifically in neuro, spine, and ENT. They're also one of the official distributors for Leica Microsystems, which has some of the best microscopes in the world. Now, Heath spent about 14 years at Stryker and has had such phenomenal success there. And let me give you kind of some of the highlights. So he won Rep of the Year in 2010 and was selected among 80 representatives, achieving #1 in dollars and #1 in percentage to quota rankings. He was a President's Council member on 2006, 2008, 2012, so 3-time President's Council member. NSE Innovation Council member from 2011 to 2018, Veteran of the Year in 2008, Rolex Award winner in 2008, and then a multi-winner incentive award trip winner. So the man has won a lot of President's Club, a lot of awards, but more importantly, he's one of the few people that I know that was an extremely seasoned rep at a big box ortho company and then made the transition and has set up a very successful distributorship. And what I like about his distributorship is, aside from, carrying the things that most a lot of distributors carry when it comes to like implants and devices and everything, they actually cover capital equipment, which is very unique. Okay. Now, that being said, listen to this episode and be sure to give Heath a follow on LinkedIn. You can look him up as Heath Chapman. And with that being said, right, I have one other tiny surprise for you guys. Not a surprise, but more of an invitation. If you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, okay, my partner for this podcast is Clary. And so Clary is a really cool software company. They're AI-based. They essentially plug into Salesforce and automate data entry into Salesforce. So it makes your life as a rep much easier. And then it extracts that data for sales leaders and allows you to be more predictive around revenue. And they're developing this whole category around revenue collaboration governance. So why am I talking about them in San Francisco? Well, on September 13th, which is a Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, okay, Clary's putting on an event where I'm going to be speaking along with their Senior Vice President of Marketing, Kyle Coleman, who is a legend in the SaaS industry, and special guest joining us on stage, the one, the only, Daniel Hawkins, founder of Shockwave Medical, founder of Avail Med Systems, and who's also founded multiple other companies along the way. He was employee number, I think, 6 at Intuitive Surgical, really laid the groundwork for a lot of their sales and marketing strategies. He's going to be joining us up on stage. It's going to be an awesome event, and the event is specifically about digital sales maturity and the playbooks needed to elevate how we sell in the industry. You know me, I'm on a mission to make this industry better when it comes to sales and marketing. Clary is a partner that I picked personally to team up and figure that out. If you live in San Francisco, Dreamforce is happening that week. It's going to be wild. That's Salesforce's annual conference. Go to this event. It's a free event, okay, at the NASDAQ and Entrepreneurial Center. Please come up, shake my hand, meet me in person, meet Daniel, meet Kyle, right? It'll be a great way to network also with some really heavyweight people in the SaaS industry. So to RSVP for that event, check the show notes below, click that link, okay, and all you got to do is enter your email in. That way we'll have you on the list. Or if you're driving right now, let's say you forget, just go to my LinkedIn profile. I'll be posting about it pretty often. You'll be able to see it, or if you're, for whatever reason, you can't find the links or whatever, shoot me a message. I'll get it to you, okay? So with that being said, here is our episode with the one, the only founder of S3 Medical, Heath Chapman. Enjoy. Welcome back to the show, everybody. And again, a big welcome to Red Hat Gang. I know many of you on All Hail Medical Sales love these Presence Club episodes. I'm trying to source some good ones. Some of you guys send me some recommendations. I'm like, I don't know. This one was locally sourced. Somebody who I'm a good friend with, somebody who's actually gone, in my program, the Medical Sales Network Effects program. And more importantly, let me make this a nice like WWE wrestling intro. 14-time Presence Club winner. That's 14, my friends. And currently the founder and principal of S3 Medical, which is a distributorship focused on ENT, neurosurgery, and spine. And that is my good friend, Heath Chapman. Heath, with an intro like that, I feel like you need like a fighting name, like Heath the Hammer Chapman or something like that. Do you have a fighting name?
I don't have a funny name. Everybody just calls me Chappie. That's about all I get out of it.
Chappie. Heath Chappie Chapman. I like that. But Heath, hey, look, thanks for coming on the show. First of all, like, we have a lot to talk about, but real quick, if you can just kind of share, like, in a couple sentences, what are the accolades that you have in terms of, the time that you were a rep? It wasn't just the 14 Presence Clubs. What other awards did you win?
Well, I was at Stryker for 14 and a half years. And while I was there, I also won Rep of the Year, Veteran of the Year, and was fortunate enough to be, picked to be on various president's councils, innovation councils, and things of that nature. So I was pretty actively involved, in the organization and had a pretty good run there. And then for the last 5 years, like you said, I've been out on my own. I started a medical device distributorship in 2018, and that's where we're at today.
Awesome. Yeah. And, I'll tell you, like, there's, we've kind of joked about this. Look, I know plenty of distributors and I love distributors, but some distributors are like, they got a couple of screws loose. I think that's part of the reason why there's distributors is like, there's no, like nobody in their right mind would employ them. They still have these like good, they have a place in medicine, so they become distributors. For you, like you carried the bag for a long time in a very reputable and an extremely competitive place, especially that Stryker's always been competitive, but the years that you were there, it was particularly competitive. And you made a successful transition to start a great med device distributorship. One of the partnerships, by the way, congratulations, that you announced last year, is that you guys picked up a very reputable piece of capital equipment, which is the Leica Microsystems, which is world renowned. Right, which really says a lot that Leica had a press release with you guys, right? So congratulations to you and your team.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, no, totally. And are you guys gonna be at NASS this year?
We won't be as S3, but I'll be there with Leica. Yes.
Sweet. Oh, awesome. I'll be seeing you at NASS. Anything that's in the SoCal area, I can't help it going to NASS. That's like a wedding for me. So like I can't miss that, So
totally.
I'll be there as well. I'm looking forward to it. So Heath, when we look at medical sales, like the goal isn't to win awards and clubs, right? But I think if you do a really good job and your organization recognizes you for the great work, like that's something that's notable. Maybe a good place to start is when you started out as a rep, what were some of the tough lessons that you learned that sort of developed you and put you in a position that you could be that successful?
Well, yes, certainly as a new rep starting out, you definitely learn, what you can say, what you can't say, who you can say it to, and who you can't say it to. I think those are probably pretty big lessons. And also, I think, the biggest thing is just learning to be, prepared. You've talked about it on previous podcasts, but, know who you're talking to, have a plan when you're going to go talk to them. If you're doing an evaluation, make sure you have, there was an old Stryker Instruments line that we used to say is bring this, this, and this, but then bring everything, and have a backup plan. Even if you thought that the surgeon was going to use one thing, bring plan A, plan B, and plan C, because chances are it's not going to go as you think it's going to go. And everybody hears that, but then you kind of learn those lessons the hard way, and you take some on the chin every now and then you finally figure out that, that's what you got to do to be prepared. And that's when you separate yourself, from everybody else as well, is when, you're in the OR and something's going down and you start presenting solutions that help with that.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, because the President's Club series was started just as a way to sort of embody what does it take to be a champion in this industry? But for the most part, the advice is very simple, which is be really disciplined, be thorough in your work, be detail oriented, but then implementing is not easy. You mentioned about being prepared, having a plan A, plan B, plan C. How much study, first of all, what line were you carrying? Were you, what division of Stryker were you at, and what line were you carrying?
Yeah. So when I initially started with Stryker, my final interview, actually, a little tidbit, was Jim Heath. Because I got hired on at Stryker Instruments.
What a legend.
In a small startup territory up here in the Pacific Northwest. So there was one of my mentors was a guy named Mike O'Connor, who actually went 28 for 28 when he was at Stryker. And they broke off his territory, and I took over a small chunk of his territory that they broke off. So I was with the Instruments division back in the day.
What criteria for winning President's Club? You mentioned that at Stryker it's the President's Breakfast, right? What was the criteria to win that, right? What did you have to do?
Yeah, so the criteria at Stryker is hitting quota, right? But everybody also knows that Stryker is pretty legendary as far as the quota expectations. My first 2 years, I believe my growth number was 53% to hit quota and 56% to hit quota. Those were the growth numbers that I had to achieve to hit quota my first 2 years at Stryker Instruments. So, and, obviously I don't know if it's changed. It's been a few years, but, when I started, it was, if you miss 2 quotas, you no longer have a job. So, there was a pretty short leash for failure and pretty high expectations.
Yeah, I would say so. And, especially I think these days when you work in competitive environments, this is why on the Instagram page, I say, something along the lines of honoring the hardest sales job on planet Earth. It's really true. I mean, I think there's a lot that I learned from deep tech and software sales in terms of process and everything. But I'll tell you, those salespeople, I tell them you guys are so spoiled. I was you have a call setter, you have an SDR, BDR to prospect, then you have the account engineer or the account executive. And then if it's a demo, they bring the sales engineer, who's an engineer who does the demo for the salesperson. Then if maybe you might have a closer if it's not the same thing. I'm in med device, it's one person for the whole thing, including the customer success part afterwards, Well,
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually, if you've mentioned that, and I've thought about it before. I actually had a job offer back in 2004, the same week, from Oracle to get into software sales, and from Stryker to go into med device. And I've had a good run in med device. I can't complain, but I've also thought of sometimes about, wow, man, looking back, that job might have actually ended up being even better than my Stryker run. But in 2004. Sitting behind a computer making software sales calls just didn't seem exciting compared to being in the OR and working in surgery and working with surgeons, right? And at the time, the pay was pretty similar. I think I want to say it was within a couple $1,000s of, what the pay was going to be at plan at both companies. But med device just seemed more exciting. Obviously, we'll probably get into a little more later, but the industry has changed dramatically in, 19 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, software sales is interesting, but I was in SaaS for a little bit and it came into the industry because I really didn't care. It's hard to care about what you're selling in software. It's not exactly making Like it's not saving lives, you know? And I think there's a lot to be
Right.
said about what we do in our space. I mean, I'm really proud of it. Plus, I think like, you know, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I'm personally very happy I started the show because we're at this interesting space where the investment dollars, you know, when you achieve a lot of things in the first world, and then what money starts chasing is death. And right now, a lot of money, even you talk about Oracle, Larry Ellison's shoveling his money into one specific area, which is like longevity in medicine. And so now there's, you know, Amazon, Google, Apple, they're all $1 trillion companies. You can only, you know, I left Microsoft out of there too. You can only grow so much. And so Microsoft isn't going to turn around and say, hey, let's start making furniture. For them to grow, it's like healthcare, you know, 21% of our GDP is spent there here in the United States. And so everybody's moving into there. And I think the first time that tech went into healthcare, they royally failed, like big dumpster fire failure. If you look at like, who was it? JP Morgan, Berkshire Hathaway, and Amazon. Yeah, I think it's like when they did their joint venture, that lasted 2 years. And so now that they, you know, it blew up in tech space, they're coming back, but looking for these strong partnerships within healthcare. So I think we're in the right place to be. So anyway, that aside, going back to your years as a rep, what were some of the more difficult lessons you learned, you know, your first few years as a rep, like things that went wrong that really taught you what you got to do to go to the next level?
I think the biggest thing is making sure you identify, you know, every single player in the process, and try to identify. I guess I'll go back to you know, a really important book for me, which was Miller Hyman, The New Strategic Selling. I actually read that book at a previous job before Stryker. I think it's one of the most important books that any sales rep should read. A lot of the sales vernacular that we use day to day, red flags, things like that, they all come from that book. Okay. And the book, there's actually workbook sections in there, and it really helps you analyze your deals and analyze your sales process from like a 10,000 foot view perspective. So that was probably the biggest thing, was thinking you had a champion and you didn't, or the champion you had didn't have the weight or pull or couldn't do what you needed them to do to get, you know, the deal done that you needed to get done. So that was probably the biggest thing, was just realizing that you have to make sure you're, you know, looking at every single situation and every potential person involved, including the janitor, you know, including, you know, the person at the front desk, you know, and the person that's ordering something down in the basement, and check all those boxes to make sure that, you know, because what ends up happening is you lose deals that you should win. You know, you can win clinically and you can be in a right position, but you miss something and you end up losing a deal.
You know, you mentioned about having a plan A and plan B and plan C. It sounds like, you know, part of that is really rooted in a lot of study. How much studying did you do? Because this is one thing I'll be honest with you. Most reps that reach out to me, whether they come through my program or they just reach out through Instagram and they're like, hey man, like I really want to be top rep. I want to do this. The first question I ask them, like, well, how well do you know your procedure guide? Like, do you have it memorized inside and out? And a lot of times like, well, kind of. You know, is that what you mean by having a plan B and plan Z, or does it go deeper than that?
You know, that's clearly important. You have to know your product, right? Because if you don't know it, or you're not comfortable with it, if you're doing an in-service or you're trying to show a surgeon and you're fiddling with it and you can't make it function properly, well, then they're not going to have confidence that they can do it, right? So definitely, you know, with the division that I was in, which was, we had a lot of power tools and things of that nature, stuff you needed to put together, you know, in the OR. You know, there was a lot of hands-on practice time, making sure that, you know, you could seamlessly and flawlessly, you know, troubleshoot it, put everything together, make it look as easy as possible, right? So that clearly was a key. I mean, that's just kind of something that if you don't do that, you probably shouldn't be doing this job, right? And I guess the other piece I mean is, you know, having, let's say that, you know, this surgeon typically prefers, you know, a certain size of something or a certain style of something, and you've been told by, you know, the coordinator that this is what he uses and this is what he uses on every single case. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if you take their word for that and you walk in there, your case is going to be the case when he asks for the next size down or the next size up or something like that. So that's kind of what we mean about having a plan A and a plan B, or you bring what you think he needs or what they tell you someone needs, the surgeon needs, but then also bring everything else you have as well, because you know, that's the day that he runs into something unique, or they decide that they're going to do something different. And if you don't have an option for them there, you're kind of done for the day.
I feel like back when you were, when the time that you were in at Stryker, the internet wasn't what it is today. And I feel like there's just between like YouTube videos, is it ViewMedi or MedView? Like there's so many different sites where you can just learn about procedures. Do you feel like it's important to go outside the scope of your product to understand, like, for example, if you're focused on spinal fusions, you should really understand the pathology and approach of the procedure to the level of a resident? Do you feel like that's helpful, or do you think that's overkill?
I think it depends on your product. In my situation, no. I mean, I think if you're a spine implant rep, or biologics, some of that stuff is fairly technical and clinical. Plus, you need to know about outcomes and be able to show that your product's going to present better outcomes. In the division that I was in, not so much. And that just happened to be where I was when we're selling drills and what Stryker Instruments basically. And then when I was only 2 years at Instruments, but then the rest of my time was at Stryker, what they called Stryker NSE. That was neurospine ENT. So we're dealing with kind of all the ancillary products that get used in the neurospine and ENT procedure. So it's the bipolars, it's the drills, bone mill. I'm trying to think. There's a few other. It's the ultrasonic aspirator. It's the other things that they would need, and most of that stuff you don't need to know it to the level of a resident. I don't believe for that particular product, but certainly there's products out there where you definitely need to be on that level.
So how important is it in terms of like nurturing? I feel like a lot of, aside from knowing your product and having these plans, like what are some other important aspects that reps have to take into account when it comes to driving adoption of new products and really driving utilization, because what else kind of comes to mind for you?
Well, I think the biggest thing is pretty standard answer, but like grit and perseverance, right? And I think the other thing too is don't get discouraged when things are going bad, and don't get too excited when things are going good, right? Because it always ends up coming back to the median, I find, right? So you just kind of I think that's what really helps the successful reps, are the reps that they don't get too emotional. It's tough to do at times, but they kind of ride the valleys and the peaks and stay pretty middle of the road. And then you just have to, maintain that perseverance and that grit. If once you express interest in something, or we had a conversation about something, or there was a lead or whatever, it stayed in my pipeline until you said no, right? So like if I would continue to follow up, and I might reduce, if someone wasn't responding or it was taking some time, I would probably, reduce the frequency of follow-up. But I would at least, if someone had expressed interest, or we'd had, a meeting and they'd said they were interested in something, and this has happened to all of us, they go radio silent afterwards, and all of a sudden you're not getting a response. I would at least follow up with them, once a quarter to make sure. And then you never know. Sometimes all of a sudden, 6 months later, they reply and they're like, yep, I'm ready to address this now. Or you see them again in the hallway and they're like, I know you've been trying to get a hold of me. I've just been busy. So, once you get an opportunity or get a surgeon interested in something or expresses interest, until you get a definitive no, keep it in your pipeline.
Do you feel like that's like something that's lacking with reps today, is this ability of like this theme of grit and perseverance? Because I don't know, maybe it's just me. I mean, I was not during the boom years of MedTech, med device, like in the 90s and 2000s, like I was in college and medical school. And so I have no experience, but at least in my estimation, most of the people I talked to that were your peers, everybody had this, for the most part, like embodied and ingrained in them. And I feel like for every 10 or 20 or 30 reps, I find one rep like that today. Do you feel like people, reps today they're not built the way they used to be built?
Yeah. So I say that. I think that I've seen some young reps that, that have that. I think that it's more important now than it ever has been. So to your point, this job is harder than it was 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
It's
yeah,
getting harder and harder every single year. Right. So those traits are more important now than they ever have been, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And yeah, I think it's definitely harder. I think When I look at the differences, I think back, let's just say in the 2000s and 90s, what was difficult was here's what was easy. There's no vendor credentialing, no rep scrubs, none of this nonsense. You can just, I remember the days where I used to walk into the hospital where nobody knows me, right? Go to the OR, right? Go to the circulating desk and be like, hey, I'm here to observe Dr. So-and-so. They said I can wash it. Yeah, great. Here's some scrubs. And they would give me nice cloth scrubs, not the paper bag garbage that you guys have to wear now.
Right.
And there's no scarlet letter red hat.
Totally.
But back then anybody could do that, which means like you pretty much had to like camp out and live at the hospital, because if you didn't, like, there's just gonna be one day that your competitor would kind of sweep in and like find a way to get into a case. Now, though, on the flip side, it is so hard to get in the hospital. Like, and the deals are so much more complicated. How do you? And again, you won President's Club 14 times. You have all these accolades, but you're the founder of a distributorship, so you're still doing this now. What are some of the challenges that you see today, and how do you and your team sort of overcome that?
Well, real quick, to piggyback on what you said earlier, when I first started, you could literally, hey, Dr. Khateeb works on Tuesday, and you happen to look at the schedule, you see he has 3 cases. You show up at the sink at 7:15. Oh, I just happen to have 3 of these in my bag today, doctor. What a coincidence. And they say, oh, I'd like to use that today. And you'd use them, and you could have a PO by the end of the week or within a couple of weeks, and your trial was done in one day after 3 cases, right? I mean, you do that now, and you are getting, security's escorting you out of the building, right? I mean, it's totally, and then you didn't even touch on, the pain that the value analysis committees are nowadays, right? I mean, the value analysis committees are just terrible. But it's a double-edged sword. I do also, I got to enjoy the tail end of the Wild Wild West. I was fortunate there in the mid 2000s where we still got to get away with a lot of that stuff. Probably 2012, 2011 is when it started changing a little bit. But and I will fully admit that it was probably a little out of control, when you have, let's say you have 5 docs and all 5 of them are using something completely different, and when they could be standardized like that makes sense for healthcare. Like, I get it. But now I think the pendulum has swung, completely the opposite direction, where now the value analysis committees, they're just getting in their own way the majority of the time nowadays, right? You can provide them a better product and cost saving.
Do you feel like VAC committees stifle innovation?
Oh, 100%. They stifle everything. I mean, they're the bane of our existence for sure. They're terrible. And what they've done is, and I know this is something that the hospitals and the CEOs and the material and the contracting people, have done purposely, but they've made it so difficult for surgeons to approve new products that most surgeons now in their hospital, and then they've also made all these, and I think this is also a big mistake that surgeons have made over the last 15 years, is very few of them are out on their own now. They all work for the hospital. And I realized there were some benefits for them to do that, but they also gave away their control when they became employees of the hospital. When these guys were free agents, and if they didn't get what they want and they could just go across town to the other facility, they got what they wanted at these facilities. But now that they're employees, they just don't get, they don't have as much control. And these value analysis committees, they've beaten these guys into submission where, unless it's just something they really, really care about or they're really, really passionate about, they're saving all their time and energy and, their favors for maybe 1 or 2 products a year, if that. And they're usually saving it for, as you would appreciate, a robot, an O-arm, some new expensive technology. They're not using it on other things that they use on a day-to-day basis that may be pretty important, but they're not going to, go die on a hill over something that, that they can live with something else. Right. So they've definitely stifled innovation and the ability to bring in new products. And I've even had instances where you have clinical support, you're saving them money, like you check all the boxes and value analysis still comes back and says no. And you're just scratching your head.
Yeah, this is where I feel like, I really emphasize in my course that you have to look at the value analysis committee almost like if you're in a movie, like, I don't know, Ocean's 11 or something, and you're or a mafia movie, and you need to figure out like who actually calls the shots in that committee, and how do I get to them and everything. I just feel like it's come down to that. It's no longer enough just to have a surgeon who's like a strong clinical champion, use the product, has an economics. It's just like not enough these days.
Well, the problem is you could be presenting a neurosurgery product, and the guy that's the head of it he's in general surgery and has no idea what or something like that. So that's the tough part about a lot of these. And then the other problem too is a lot of hospitals don't want you to know is on the committee. They don't want you to know who's on the committee. They won't tell you, so you can't. It's like a secret.
Yeah, well, it's funny because like that same way, and this is a great example of how why when you have administrators running healthcare, no offense to administrators, but people who are non-clinicians, this is what the kind of stuff that happens. Like, for example, most of the time, like the doctor, when you get a prior authorization rejected, you have to go talk to the physician who's representing the insurance company. You're not talking to a peer. It's like so many times I talk to an orthopedic surgeon. They're like, yeah, I just talked to some jack off cardiologist who works for the insurance company. He has they have no idea what I'm talking about. Right. Like I'd be so if I put my marketing, if I had to, for example, as a marketer, some of my ads get rejected, right? And usually when I submit for I don't know, some kind of approval or something, if I had to deal with somebody who at least I don't know, wasn't a marketer, I don't know, they were an engineer or something, I'd be furious. And that's not a really big deal. For this other stuff, I really feel for doctors. The other side of it, it's just so tough. But I feel like something's going to break this, Heath, because it can't continue like this, is that so many doctors, they want to be on their own. The culture of medicine is actually entrepreneurial. And now they're becoming employees, because it's hard when you can be a great surgeon, but then, I don't know, Kaiser, HCA, name your health system, buys up all the practices around you. And now your buddies are like, dude, I can't refer any business to you, Right. And then they go work for these hospitals as employees, and they're miserable. It's really I don't know. My dad's a general surgeon. I'm so happy he got out 10 years ago. He opened his own varicose veins practice and then essentially just retired. But God, it's painful to watch, Yeah,
he got out at the right time. Once these guys become employees, I mean, they have almost zero control and zero power, zero ability. They just get told to. There's one exception. And this is what, a lot of surgeons don't realize. I don't think they realize it. The number, and this is a shout out to all the surgeons out there if you're listening to this, you have the most control and power over what you want before you sign on the dotted line. So use that to your advantage. If you're a new surgeon getting recruited by a hospital, send them your list and make them commit to that list. Otherwise, and make that part of your package almost. Because once you become an employee, they'll tell you they're going to work on stuff. And I've seen surgeons that they've asked for things for 2-3 years after they show up, and the hospital has zero intention to buy it.
That's actually really good advice. I think that's the first time I've had somebody from our industry give actionable advice. I 100% agree with you. And by the way, I got to do a plug for Dr. Sandra White. So Sandy White is a pain management physician, wildly successful. She's in academia back, I don't know, back in the 2000s, was underpaid. And she's like, why am I not getting paid for this department I built up? Leaves academia at UCSF, goes to Louisiana, sets up an ASC, doesn't get the money that she deserves, and just says, screw these people, starts her own practice, builds her own ASC, clinic, so on and so forth, sells it all to private equity, just crushes it with an exit, and then decides most doctors, all of them are terrible at business. So now she has a program called the Business of Medicine. So you're a physician, just look up Sandy White, and I highly recommend her group to join her group. But you're absolutely right. Before you sign on, that's when you have the most leverage, because then you can say, well, this isn't in line with what I want. I'm going to go somewhere else. I think surgeons need to. I think too many times they assume that they know how to do these things, because when you work on the human body, it's the most complicated thing in the world. You naturally think, oh, I can do everything. Really, you can't. And I think surgeons need to learn the business of medicine. Otherwise, they're going to continue getting taken advantage of like this.
They do, and a lot of them aren't interested in it, though. I mean, that's the problem is, they're interested, and I get it. They're interested in helping people. They're interested
But do you think that's an excuse?
Healing people.
I don't I don't
Do you
think
think
that's
excuse?
a legit excuse though, Heath. I hear you. I think they gotta just get over it, man. I hear that all the time. I think you're right. Is that they're not interested in it? Look, like I have a thing of saying things that makes me lose audiences, but it is what it is. You want to know why healthcare is the way it is today? Like, one part of it is that for the last 50 years, healthcare has been going in this direction, and surgeons and doctors, physicians, they've just said, you know what? I'm just going to work harder. And this other stuff that I have no interest in dealing with, the business side, the insurance, like, I don't want to deal with that. That'll take care of itself. And they've done it more and more and more. And while they focused on just the practice of medicine, guess who became interested on that side? Lawyers, lobbyists, and MBAs. That's who's driving healthcare.
Sure,
and so,
good
like,
point.
physicians have themselves to blame, and they hate that I say this, but it's just true. If you go look at the history of medicine, that's, and so I get excited when I see more physicians jumping. And by the way, I've tracked this data. More physicians are not only logging online to like LinkedIn and Twitter, but playing active roles in healthcare these days more than ever. And I think social media is a big part of that. And I hope that helps change things. It feels like it,
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
By the way, I know we have a mutual respect and admiration and love for our good friend, the anonymous Mad Device Rep. And
Absolutely.
man, MDR, big shout out to you. I got nothing but love for you. I have to catch up with him. He's a good man. But he had like,
by the way, he quit doing his podcast. He hasn't done an episode in like 4 or 5 months, I don't think.
That is very true. There's a very specific reason for that. How do I put this? I don't think he would mind that I say this, but MDR has started a new role, right?
Good for him.
That's one thing, and he has just become a new parent. So
he's in the trenches.
Yeah, had their first kid. And so
that'll do it. That'll do it for sure.
Combo of those two things. But he put out this not a tweet. It was on Threads, which, by the way, the excitement around Threads lasted like 5 hours. I
totally missed that one.
Oh, dude, you didn't miss much. It lasted literally like a few hours. Like, so day one of Threads, average user time on Threads was 20 minutes. 24 hours later, now it's like 5 minutes. Okay, it's like not a good sign, because it's like, what are you going to get out of Threads? It's a knockoff of Twitter. It's like, hey, get exclusive access to the tweets I tweeted 5 hours ago on Threads. Like, who cares? But he did have a great post, and I just love this. I love this. This is the stuff I live for, Heath. Mad Device Rep put MedRep hack. Keep a set of loops and a print scrub cap handy to get into accounts where you aren't credentialed. Turn on notifications for more $1 million advice.
I actually did see that one. I think he reposted that on something, or maybe
you reposted on Instagram.
Yeah. But it also works when you're in the parking lot as well. If you wear that scrub cap and you park in the surgeon parking lot, you can just
mark my words,
roll right through,
and just put the loops as like kind of dangling from the window or from the mirror. I guarantee you, Heath, somewhere in America, there's a rep who has already ordered loops and a scrub cap from Amazon. Is like, this is my last chance. This is the only, like, somebody who's just been trying to get into account. They can't get past security, and they're just like, they're like the end of the rope, and they're like, I don't care. I'm going all in on this.
You'll appreciate this. Just a quick funny side story. One of my Stryker
these
colleagues
episodes are nothing but funny side stories. So please,
okay.
Go.
One of my Stryker colleagues, I won't dime him out by naming his name, but he's a pretty tenured guy, and he'd been here for quite a while. He found this parking spot like on the side of, I'll name the facility. It was Swedish Hospital, the main facility in downtown.
It's a hard
Seattle.
place to park at. I've been there.
Yeah. He found this parking spot that was on this road that they did. It was kind of just a beat down road. This is a few years ago. And they ended up building a new tower kind of across the street. But before they built this new tower, he would park every day in this parking spot. And I don't know if they just figured he was a doc or they were just so used to, because he was an implant rep. So he had to be there every single day. So he had his car parked there every day for like 10 years, never got a ticket. And then they ended up deciding to build this, like right across the street on the side that was kind of the rundown corner of the hospital. They built the new orthopedic tower. And he was so pissed. He's like, dude, I got to pay for parking now. I haven't paid for parking for 10 years. I was like, and every day I'd drive by there and I'd see his car and I'd be like, I can't believe that guy does that every single day and never gets towed, never gets a ticket, nothing.
That is amazing. You know, there are reps who have worked, you know, like reps who have worked 10 years plus at places like Cook County or Montefiore or, you know, MD Anderson, you know, really old, massive, historic hospitals. And they got some stories. Like they know the ins and out of the hospital like nobody else. It's just like, I don't know, like these hospital systems, it's almost like, you know, in those movies where there's like an underworld and there's like that one character who like knows all the secret hideout places and like all the different things going on. Like I feel like there's reps who have, you know, because you'll have physicians who might circulate in and out of a hospital, nurses, staff, and everything. But there's medical salespeople who have been working at certain hospitals for like 10, 20 plus years, and they know everything, you know?
Oh, 100%.
Like, it's unbelievable. You know, I'm going to do a episode on it, but I'm almost done reading that book. It's a surgeon salesman or the salesman surgeon, you know, the guy who pretty much like blew the cover for all the reps and said, like wrote this book was like, yeah, as a med rep, like I'm being asked to scrub in and do the surgery. And like that became this huge expose. Have you heard of this book?
I haven't, because that hasn't happened. That wasn't recently, was it?
No, this book was written in like 1975. Somebody posted about it. Yeah. And I had to like, so right now you can find one copy on the internet for like $800. I got mine for like $90, but I'm like, worth it. I'm doing it. It was wild as hell. Like essentially this guy was an orthopedic rep in New York working for like, I can't even remember the company's name, some random company. And essentially he was in a case on a total hip and and this doctor was like trying to do something. And the guy got like frustrated and the rep was like, hey, you know, when you're trying to coach a physician through a difficult part with your technology and you're like, you know what, this part is almost in everything. The surgeon got pissed. And he's like, F you, why don't you just come in and do this? And the surgeon broke scrub and left. And the whole room looked at this guy and the guy like was like, okay. So the guy scrubs in and comes in and does the case. And then word starts getting around with other surgeons like, yeah, this guy's really good at it. So then he starts being asked by hospitals like, yeah, we're going to use your technology. Then you have to scrub in the case and you have to do that part. And then essentially, like long story short, I think the word broke out because I think something happened and like a hospital or somebody was getting sued and he was involved in this case. And they're like, well, if we're going to get sued, this guy should get sued too because he was part of the case. And then he ended up, I think, writing this book.
Well, I think that used to happen, I don't know if on a regular basis, but the urban legend I heard back in the day was when that stopped it was something to do with U.S. Surgical back when they were just, you know, cranking and coming out. And there was a rep that scrubbed in something similar and you basically had to help the surgeon finish a case. And that kind of came crashing down. And that's kind of when that came to an end when reps couldn't help. They used to scrub in and assist and handle instruments on a pretty regular basis, I think.
Yeah, I know. I believe it. I mean, in some ways I can see it because like forget about just high tech stuff, just implants. There's so much detail that no surgeon, no human being has a time to memorize all this stuff for every company. So I kind of get it.
Yeah, when you're standing there trying to teach a scrub tech how to do something and they blow you off before the case and they don't listen to you even though you try to talk to them, and now all of a sudden everybody's taking bullets in the OR and something happens and you're sitting over there trying to point. Some of them hate a laser pointer, so you can't have a laser pointer. You get yelled at for that. So you're literally over there trying to show them.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, it depends.
That's like taking a scalpel away from a surgeon. You can't be a rep without a laser point. Why can't you? This is news to me, man. Where's my break?
Scrub techs get mad. I've had scrub techs get mad at me before over.
Why?
I haven't used one. I don't know, but that's actually another tip though. Like if you have something that requires assembly, if it's within reason, have one in your pocket so you can show somebody how to put it together when you're in the room, because inevitably the scrub techs, it blows me away sometimes how they some of them are not very intuitive on how to work with stuff, and some of them are fantastic. You can hand them something one time and they know how to do it, and other ones they can sit there and mess with something for half an hour and not figure it out.
Oh my god, kind of seriously, can we, it's taken, how many episodes have we done? Like 70 or 80. I've never talked about this topic. Let's take a sidebar on this topic of scrub techs. For every good, scrub techs are very much like med reps in some ways. For in my anecdotal experience, for everyone phenomenal one, you're like, oh my, like this guy or gal might as well be a surgeon, right? That kind of scrub tech. There's like a handful of them where you're like, how is it that you're even allowed to be in the same room and touch the patient and some of these instruments? Like you're like there's I've been into some, like, dude, like I remember when I was covering robotic cases in spine, like there's some scrub techs when I would go meet with them and I'm trying to coach them through things. I'm like, hey, you realize that if this part of the procedure doesn't go well, it's on you. Like, I'm trying to help you out here. I literally had to tell a scrub tech this.
But the problem is that, because the scrub tech can make or break you, right? Because they're the one that works with the surgeon every single day. And if it doesn't go well, they're going to throw you under the bus and drop a manhole cover on you in 2.2 seconds. And then it's going to be your fault, right? And by the way, and then if you want to run a successful trial and you don't want that scrub tech to completely hate you and undermine everything you're doing, you have to just take the bullets and basically fall on the sword, even though it was the scrub tech's fault, right? I mean, every single person in med devices had to do that.
Oh, totally. How do you deal? So like, this is the other thing is that like, you can have, people think I'm joking when I say like some scrub techs, they will sabotage a case if it means that they have to do some extra, because they don't get paid a lot and they're not going to get paid more for your tech. And even if it's better for the patient, whatever, some scrub techs are like, they're like, oh, like I'm nothing but thumbs today, doc. Like this thing is just, I don't know how it works. This is too much. Have you had a scrub tech try to sabotage you before?
I mean, yeah, there's been scrub techs that I think, listen, not everybody's going to like you all the time, right? So I'm sure that there's scrub techs that weren't the biggest fan of me and, they probably didn't do me any favors or, of course. I mean, I think that happens to everybody at some time. I can't think of an instance where I knew 100% definitively that, the scrub tech was trying to sabotage a procedure, but certainly, they'll do little stuff like, oh, this isn't as easy to use as something else. Or, if they struggle with it even a little bit, they'll kind of, and you got to overcome that or, and I've just kind of found, I used to let stuff like that really bother me when I was little. And I kind of think that I had to address every single little objection that popped up from the scrub techs and surgeons. And now, honestly, I kind of just let them vent and I don't even really address it, just kind of let it go. And as long as the rest of the case goes fine, you're normally going to be fine. That's definitely a tip for new reps is, and even a surgeon, sometimes surgeons will just say stuff. I have found that most surgeons kind of feel like they need to say something negative about anything that they use at some point, because they're always about kind of sharpening the spear and kind of getting better and better and better, right? So anytime you show them a new product, usually they're going to tell you something negative before they tell you something positive, right? But that doesn't mean that they don't like it or they don't want to use it. But when you're a new rep, you kind of like, oh my God, they don't like it. If they say anything negative, you kind of start to freak out, over in the corner of the room. And I've just found that a lot of times, just let the comment go. You don't need to address every single comment. And if it's something that was important enough, they'll usually bring it up again at the end of the case when you're having a conversation. So let's say they're trying something for the first time. They may make some passing comments. Just let it go unless they look at you and ask you a specific question. But if they're just kind of making general comments, it'll normally come back up again when you recap. If it's something that's truly an issue for them, it'll normally come back up again at the end of the case. And then you address it at that time. But if it goes well, the rest of the case, a lot of times they'll just be like, yeah, it works great. I like it. I'll use it again or whatever. And you're not making an issue out of something that they were just kind of passively mentioning because not everything they say doesn't mean they won't use it. They're just kind of commenting on what they're using.
Yeah. And I think, again, I know we just kind of had some fun, like knocking like the bad scrub techs, by the way, the bad ones. Most of them are great. And I think like the most important thing as a rep is that like, you have to know that it's almost like managing a team for success. That like, it's not just a surgeon. You have to, work well with the circulating nurse, the scrub tech. If it's a C-arm person, like there's a lot of coordination. And I think part of it is learning how to be a good coach and to be honest with you, is being likable. Because I think when you find a way to be likable and somewhat relatable, the team will go out of its way to help you. And they're like, this guy or gal is working hard. Like for me, the story that I always tell people is just like when I started out as a rep, I had just left medical school and I started as a rep in my hometown, right? So people already knew my dad. right? So of course, like I wasn't looked at like, oh, he started working in this company because he's good at what he does or has some talent. It was very much like, oh, his dad's a surgeon. Even though my dad's a general surgeon, I work for a robotics company. But when I went to the hospital that my dad used to practice at, I had to make sure that publicly everybody saw that I was willing to do anything, which meant like the first 4 months until they literally asked me like, hey, you don't have to do that. I used to go to SPD and take the instruments back. I used to wash them myself, just so people can see that I was willing to get my hands dirty and I was nobody special, so anything that I could do extra to help the team to be seen, I thought that was an asset versus a lot of the reps who I saw come in, to be quite frank, acted like complete jackasses. And I don't think it helps when you have this air of arrogance and you have like a really flashy watch on or a huge diamond ring or like, there's nothing wrong with that. But like sometimes you got to like tone that down because you're dealing with people who make as much money as you spent on that watch in like a few months, right? Like, I'm not against it, but I just feel like you have to pick and choose what you want to do,
I think that you hit the nail on the head, right? What's the golden rule of sales? And it's people buy from people they like. So it doesn't matter how well you know your product. It doesn't matter anything. I mean, all this other stuff we've talked about, generally speaking, people have to like you before any of this other stuff even comes into play, right? So, and to your point, make yourself valuable to the team. Try to do what you can to make that scrub tech's life easier. Try to do what you can to make the circulator's life easier. Obviously, I think a lot of reps, I do see this a lot. A lot of the reps get tunnel vision on the surgeon, because that's the surgeon. That's the guy who's the captain of the ship. And at the end of the day, probably the final decision maker. But you can't ignore the scrub tech and the circulator and the other people in the room as well, because when you walk out of the room, they're still talking to the surgeon. So if it doesn't go well or they don't like you and they share that with the surgeon, he may like your product, but if the staff doesn't like you, you're probably not going to get very far.
That's like such good advice, Heath. I wholeheartily agree. And I think like, when I went into marketing, I noticed this at conferences where really big wig surgeon, right, comes to the booth and, they're having so many people pitch them and everything. And they're normally accompanied by either a resident or fellow, sometimes a PA, and that person's their right hand. And that person's always by themselves. Like I'll see like a mob. I remember a neurosurgeon at AANS a long time ago was mob, different companies were talking. And I noticed that this guy's PA, she was just like hanging out. And I was like, I'm going to go talk to the PA. So I spent time talking to the PA and I just realized like how much pull that person had. And lo and behold, we found out later, a few weeks, like when the surgeon was approached about our technology, his first response was like, well, did you talk to my PA about it? Like I run everything by her. And I tell reps all the time, I was like, however good you think you are at pitching your product, on their worst day talking about your product, that PA or that scrub tech, whoever the right hand of that surgeon is going to be way more persuasive than you on your best day,
100%. No doubt about it. PAs and MAs are huge. Absolutely.
100%. And again, it's a team sport. And I think that the more like the best reps, they know, they recognize that. And then they realize like we all like to believe that people pick our technologies or our products because it is the best in class product and we did a good job of positioning the value prop. But there's all these psychological biases that go on, like including like, do they like you or not? Like I think there's plenty of reps who have great products. Actually, I'm gonna get in trouble for this one. There is a spine surgeon that I know personally, a young guy, and he loves the Globus robot. He loves it. Hates their implant, doesn't use it. And I asked him, and I was like, why don't you like using their implants and stuff? And it is pre-NuVasive merger. They're still working that out. But his response is like, it's not exactly just the implants. He's like, I don't really have a problem with that. It's because their service sucks. He's like, when they supported my cases, I told them these are specific things I need for this case. And they showed up and didn't have it. And then they tried to convince me that I could use something else. He's like, that pissed me off royally. Not going to use them. I love their robot. Like, but the implant side, the service that they provided sucked,
So he was choosing the rep over the implant in that instance.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he 100%. Was like, hey, that
100%.
The local rep at that facility, he preferred your product or company X over Globus for that particular.
100%. Yeah. Another good example.
And that happened. So like when NSE started for us, I mean, we were for Stryker, when NSE started, we were
What's
a distant
NSE?
number, neurospine ENTs. That's when they broke off the Neuropower, which was the division. In January of 06 is when we went to that division. And we were a distant number 3 in the high-speed drill game for neurospine and ENT. It was Medtronic with like 45, 50% market share. OnSpoc probably had 25, 30%. And Stryker had maybe 10, 15% market share. And quite honestly, both OnSpoc and Medtronic had better products than we. But Stryker hires people, and Stryker is more concerned about people than products. They have good products, but their philosophy is, hey, we'll take an okay product or a product that is satisfactory, and if we have a better person in the room, we're going to win. And that's why they have the Gallup. That's the secret to the sauce. Obviously, everybody's heard about the Gallup test. That's kind of the secret sauce at Stryker, because that weeds out the people. But yeah, we had for 4 years, we had a subpar system, and we were still winning evaluations.
That's
and
amazing.
we basically put, within 5 years, we put OnSpoc in a body bag.
Yeah, I've never heard of that company actually.
Well, yeah, they used to be a pretty solid number 2, and I would say by 2012, so maybe 6 years, 5-6 years, we had pretty much run them almost completely out of the market. They're still around, but they don't have near the market share that they used to.
Yeah, no, it's and it's funny. So like Jim Heath talks about that. When we talked about in this episode that we're releasing with him about building teams, his thing was like, is this person going to go like above and beyond for the customer, right? And like just another completely separate example, Sandy White's the pain management physician I mentioned. She always jokes, she's like, well, when it comes to technology, like she says like I'm a Boston Scientific gal. And she's like, and a big reason for that is like the Boston Scientific reps went above and beyond in terms of not only servicing and helping me, but also like supporting. I think they have to answer questions for the neuromodular stuff with patients. And she's like, they go above and beyond. And so it's purely based on service. So I think at the end of the day, like it's rare to have a technology that has it's just such a huge difference in value. Most of these technologies are pretty incremental in terms of the value. And so after that, all you got left is like your customer support and customer success. Like that's it,
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And, I think, personally, I'm happy that somebody like you who's won so many different awards and you've had, you're no spring chicken. You've been around for a while, right? But your advice,
definitely.
I say with the utmost respect, by the way. With the utmost respect.
Yeah, the gray hair wasn't the giveoy, or the lack of it. What I do have left is gray.
No, yeah. Gray's coming back, man. But my point is that like I think as a rep, you can take a lot of that has to be very motivating as a rep to know that, hey, you know what? Sorry guys, newsflash, you're not going to influence product management, but knowing that, you know what? I can really be a business owner, and the way that I choose to do business and service the customer will influence whether they're going to adopt the product or not. I think that gives a lot of power to a rep to say, hey, you know what? Like I can genuinely influence this, because I think a lot of reps, they're under the impression they don't have that much influence, and I think they actually do. They haven't tried hard enough. They haven't become creative enough. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I would agree with that. I think that was, to kind of keep coming back on this, but that was one of the other, unique things within the Stryker culture was they empowered you to run, even though you were a W-2, working for Stryker, they empowered you to run the business like it was your own business. And they, I've heard that that's not as easy as it used to be, that it's changed a little bit, in the last few years, depending on the division. That's not that I wouldn't say the entire company's that way, but based on each division, it's not quite the way it used to be. But, we had a lot of pricing autonomy. We had autonomy to do whatever we needed to do to take care of the customer. So you were, you felt empowered to do what you needed to do to take care of them. And we were allowed to make those decisions, on the ground to take care of the customer, which I think that's also part of what's made Stryker what it is today, and why the company's been as successful it has been, is because surgeons and staff know, they know what they're going to get with most Stryker reps, and they know that what they're, that they have the ability to do what they need to do to take care of the customer. I think that it's funny too. You made me think of something. and we go back to some of the basic stuff. I'm reminded that it's actually shocking to me how many reps in this industry don't follow up, don't return customers' emails and calls. I hear all the time
Seriously?
About customers that tell me that they'll call a rep for something and 2-3 days will go by before they hear from them.
You gotta be kidding me.
It's unbelievable to me.
Are you serious?
No, I hear it on a fairly regular basis. And
why?
I don't know.
I'm shocked.
I mean, for me, it's like if a customer is reaching out to you, and the fact that you don't reach out to them, or have you shouldn't be doing this job if you're not going to be replying in a timely manner.
I'm like
to an issue like that.
I'm at a loss of words right now. So this has happened multiple times. But I don't understand why. Like why? What's the reasoning for that? There has
that's. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm not wired that way, so I don't understand it either. But I would say once a quarter, a customer says something to me like, "Oh, thanks for getting back to me. I called someone else, and I called them 2 days ago, and they didn't reply to me, or I've sent them an email and I haven't heard back from them." And so that's just the stupid stuff where you got to be doing that. I mean, that's the blocking and tackling that you have to be doing.
Oh, 100%. Okay, for reps listening, and again, this is why I started my company, and we got a lot of work to do to really change how we sell and market in this industry. But pro tip for reps, okay? Number one, you should learn how to segment your email inbox. I guarantee you guys are not getting that many emails. You should not sign up for garbage BS newsletters. Like if it's industry related, do it. But like you need to learn how to automate or at least segment your inbox. And the other thing is at least if you're in sales, I'm in sales. I still sell a lot of my own stuff. You should check your spam inbox, like the spam box in your inbox once a day, because you have no idea what ends up accidentally going in there. And man, I don't even know how to respond to that. I feel like I'm gonna go and rage post about this in a second. I can't. Like I'm just astounded. No, because like Heath, especially on All Hail Medical Sales on Instagram, I get all these messages. Oh, but Omar, can't get a hold of this person. I can't do that. Everything. Like, thanks. Thanks for giving me something to write about.
Well, you're welcome. That was my gift to you today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Heath, as we kind of we kind of wrap up, and it was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I just had a blast. This audience loves like tactics and hacks. Like, what are some like rep hacks? Because again, you're still living the life in the trenches, which is why like I was really excited to have you on. What are some hacks out in the field, whether it's like servicing customers, parking, like take it in any direction you want, but if you can share some of your favorite hacks out in the field, what would they be?
Well, actually, it's not necessarily a hack, but like it's funny that this came out. I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and it's kind of more about, especially if you're at an organization where quotas end all be all with high expectations, and it's kind of more just like advice. Because I think that some of these companies and some of these rules, we've talked about how difficult they are, right? Like you're going to win deals, you're going to lose deals you should win. Now, the flip side is this doesn't happen as much, unfortunately, but you're also going to win deals that you probably should have lost. Okay. So that happens. That's a two-way street. Or, you're going to get bluebird deals that just drop out of nowhere that you didn't have, any business probably, getting that deal, and you got lucky, right? There's some of that. But, I think quota and expectations that some of these companies can kind of eat reps up like a cancer sometimes, right? They just start getting twisted around the axles, and they let kind of quota consume them. So one of my biggest pieces of advice is, and this is an ex-colleague of mine, he kind of dubbed this kind of the walk of faith. And that was get up every day, do everything in your power, legally, morally, and ethically to make your number without damaging your relationships. And you just have to have faith that at 5:01 on December 31st, you're going to cross the finish line. And because quota at these companies, we could do a whole separate hour talking about quota setting at these companies and how insane it is. And Stryker was no exception. 90% of the time, there's no rhyme or reason to how these companies are setting quota in a lot of these instances. And as a rep, you have little to zero control over what quota you get And as we've alluded to in some of your other podcasts before, there's a lot outside of our control. There's value analysis committees, there's surgeons moving, there's all sorts of stuff that's also outside of your control. So what you control is your effort every day, and that getting up and doing everything legally, morally, and ethically, to kind of make your number. And then you just got to have faith that it's going to take care of itself, and you're going to cross the finish line at the end of the year. You really have to compartmentalize that. Otherwise, quota will eat you up, especially at a place like Stryker.
Oh, 100%. And I think, to be honest with you, there's something to be said about effort and discipline. I always talk about this with entrepreneurs and even reps, which is like, you can have a business result you're trying to achieve. And of course, like, you figure out what objectives you got to hit, like number of meetings, etc. The only thing you really have control of is what do you do activity wise every single day. And I think if you have a repeated action and you're constantly evaluating what you're doing, and you do, again, everything you said, legally, ethically, and then what was the third one you said?
Morally, without jeopardizing relationships, right? Because most of us, I would assume, you want to be here for a long time, right? So are you going to make a short-term decision to get you to quota for 1 year that potentially might damage a relationship for future quotas down the road, right? That makes no sense. So don't make short-term decisions.
No, 100%. But at the same time, Heath, I don't think some reps creatively try hard enough. I think they just kind of phone it in. It's like, oh, I sent like 3 emails this week. Meanwhile, look, there's brands on Instagram to sell like at a $20 piece of gym equipment. They run ads retargeting me. They put out content. They send me emails. All this for a $20 decision, for like $100,000 multi-million-dollar decision. You have to get so much more creative. You have to be very relentless. And I think like the champions in our industry, the people who win President's Club, who hit quota. I'll quote Stefan, the CEO from BrainLab, who said, in the world, like in terms of physics, when a problem exists, the solution by definition coexists. And I think that a lot of people just need to be a lot more relentless and creative in terms of saying, I got to find a way in. And I think, again, 501, December 31st, if you've done everything possible, right, the chips will fall in the right place. And if not, then your company at least knows, like, this person did every single thing, like people miss quota.
At least you can, you can look at yourself in the mirror and you can at least say, hey, listen, I left it all out there. And, and then, missing quota doesn't mean that you suck or that you're a bad person or whatever. I was fortunate that I didn't miss one, and listen, I'll be honest too. There was some luck involved with that, right? I mean, you can do all the right things. I knew people that did all the right things and were phenomenal reps and missed quotas. And I knew reps that weren't very good that never missed quotas. So there's that in there as well. So there's a little bit there's a lot of variables that are in there, right? But don't let it consume you. Don't let it become your identity. That would be another big piece of advice: is don't let that become your identity. And I'll be fully transparent. I kind of learned that the hard way. When I left Stryker, I had a lot of my identity tied up into, being a top performer and making quota.
Do you feel like that was a big lesson that you learned as an entrepreneur when you started on your own?
Oh, 100%. It definitely gave me, different perspective, right? And then also things happen for a reason, right? Stryker had a good run, came to an end, and, other doors opened for me. And, I believe that, this kind of next chapter that I'm doing now is going to end up being, bigger and better than, even what I was doing before.
Oh, absolutely. For those, and we'll kind of maybe wrap up on this, but like, there's a lot of W-2 reps who decide that they're just kind of go out on their own, be an independent rep, independent consultant, which is perfectly fine. Maybe start a distributorship. Like, starting one, it's hard. It ain't easy. But I think that like if you have what it takes, it could be a great career for you. Like, what's your advice to those like aspiring entrepreneurial, 1099 distributor reps? Like, what's your advice to them in terms of getting started?
Yeah, I think that well, first of all, the analogy that I've told people, so people that know me have heard this before, is when you're W-2 and you're working at a Stryker, a Medtronic, a Boston Scientific, all the big companies, right? Just, the 20 biggest companies in med device. I don't know about you, I went to a pretty big high school. So the analogy I give is I literally sat at the same table with the same 8 to 10 people for 4 years, I think, right? and there was 300 other people in the cafeteria at the same time. I knew them, right? But I sat at the table with my friends, right? That's what it's like when you're working for W-2 for a big company. You're sitting at the same table with the same group of people every single day. And you don't realize that there's hundreds of other people out there. And there's hundreds of other companies looking that either have an emerging, by the way, this is where a lot of emerging technology is coming from as well, right? They have a new emerging technology. They can't afford a direct sales force, right? They're new. They have one product, or they have a handful of products, or, they're a smaller niche player. They can't afford to have 130 reps, around the country, right? So there's a lot more opportunity and companies out there than you probably realize or think. So, putting together a product bag, isn't as hard as you would think. And, we actually turn down more companies and more products now than we accept. I would say that this would be my two other biggest pieces of advice if you do decide to go out on your own is pick a niche, pick a lane, stay in, no matter, you're going to have people reaching out to you weekly, you're going to have peak companies because there's so many companies that are looking for representation that can't afford direct sales force. So you're just going to get inundated with all these companies talking about they have the next greatest thing, the next greatest widget, right? So pick a niche. In our case, it's neurospine, ENT, which seems weird, but those three specialties all use a lot of the same products. They all use bipolars. They all use some similar instruments. They all use microscopes. There's a lot of things that cross all three of those specialties. So you see that pretty regularly. So pick a lane, stay in a lane. Whatever your background is. So if it's general surgery, urology, neurospine, whatever it is, orthopedics. And then the other thing I would say is don't take on too many products too soon. So start out with, do your due diligence, try to figure out what's going to be the best. If you can find products that have existing business and they're willing to, team up with you because of your relationships, then, and your success, that's even better. But a lot of times, a lot of the companies are new or they haven't been able to find anybody in a particular market. So, pick a lane and then don't get too many products. And then you're going to have to be able to weather the storm for a little bit. I think that when you do it is also a factor because, it's high risk, high reward. You're going to be 100% commission based. You're only going to eat what you kill. You're not going to have a base pay. The biggest downside, honestly, is healthcare. The healthcare sucks. It just does. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Basically, you're paying to protect yourself from cataclysmic disaster. If something happens and you're not getting a whole lot for it. But I think that in going back to our conversation earlier about how this industry's changed, commissions and salaries have come down. Territories have gotten smaller. Medical device companies have realized that they don't need to be paying people $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. They can keep everybody in that 150 to 300 slot. And there's not a whole lot, which is a great living, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So there is a lot more upside in being a 1099 or going independent if you put together the right products and put together the right product portfolio. It can be very rewarding, and you can have a significantly higher upside if you're willing to take the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really solid advice. And just kind of repeat that back. The whole idea is as the saying goes, niches, the riches are in the niches. And I think there's a lot of value of niching down and being known for something, because then you focus on the customers that you can help the most, being med device companies, and then the other customers that you can service the best, which is, the physicians. I think that's really, really solid advice, because especially as an entrepreneur, it's really tempting to go from thing to thing to thing. It's you get a high almost of starting this new thing, but revenue and cash flow scales with simplicity, not with carrying a bunch of different things, So Heath, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you're interested in connecting with Heath, he is on LinkedIn. So I'll leave his LinkedIn below. Aren't you on TikTok, by the way?
I observe TikTok. I don't post anything on TikTok. I'm a stalker.
Oh, you are on TikTok. Oh, I was just joking. I didn't realize. Oh, we use
Oh no,
TikTok.
absolutely. Hey, listen, this is people disagree with me, but I'm a huge TikTok fan. So and people I
Really?
think have
Hey,
TikTok has a bad name with a lot of people, and I don't know why. I just tell them, hey, it's basically if you like YouTube videos, it's short YouTube videos, right? My TikTok is full of green egg recipes and
oh, God.
stuff like that. I mean,
Dude,
so that's what my
no, but you're
TikTok's
right.
full of.
Look, interest-based search is a huge thing because, like, you go in, like, when you go to a new city, I don't use TikTok for this. I'm more of an Instagram guy, but I do have TikTok for business. But if I go to, I don't know, Vegas and I Google top restaurants in Vegas, I'm just going to see garbage, like just garbage ads. If I go on TikTok, I'm going to see like content-rich media, interest-based media. And it's like so much more engaging and more valuable in my opinion. And by the way, the recipes are insane. Look,
I just planned a vacation with using TikTok. So we're going on a vacation, and I literally did TikTok. Found some creators that posted about where all the hot spots are at. I haven't Google searched a recipe in probably 2 years. I just go on TikTok and look for a recipe, scroll through 3 or 4, find the recipe I like. I do most of the cooking in my house, so because I enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, I think that certainly you can go down a rabbit hole, and obviously the thing too is there's a lot of really funny people on there as well. But there's the lighthearted side of it as well. But there's also there's industry stuff there. Like a guy I follow that is very informative is Chester Donnelly. Down there in Texas. I think he's in Dallas.
Yeah,
he's got a fantastic TikTok. If you're in spine or you work in spine, you should be on TikTok and following him because he has a fantastic TikTok page.
You want to know how small this world is?
How small?
Chet and I are not only friends, we went to medical school together.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
I used to study with Chet. Yeah.
He's got a great TikTok. His videos are fantastic.
Oh, he does a great job. And I love he's very creative. I love how he designs his posts and posts like case studies. But his Instagram and TikTok are phenomenal. But big shout out to Chet. He's actually, I think he's like episode number 4 or 5 on my podcast. It was so long. I really should have him back. Because my audience is way bigger than back then. But yeah, big shout out. But
you're gonna get whatever your interest is. I was doing last year. I did some home remodel projects, and I'd go on there and look for advice on the things I was doing for my bathroom remodel. So people view it as kind of like a negative thing, and it can be, like all social media. Like I get that, but overall, like I said, I'm a pretty big fan. I use it for a lot of things that I need when I need to go find information now versus going to my computer and jumping on Google, because I think Google searches have become garbage for the most part.
Yeah, it's a tool like anything else. It's like fire. Like you can use fire to, cook a meal and warm your home, or you can use it to burn your home down,
Totally.
So
100%.
Awesome. Well, Heath, look, thank you so much for joining the show. Everybody, this has been another episode of the State of MedTech, our President's Club series. If you have somebody you want to recommend for the President's Club series, shoot me a message on LinkedIn or DM me on Instagram. We'd love to have you on the episode. And just as a reminder, if you are a regular listener of this show and you have not reviewed the show and given it 5 stars and written an Apple review, shame on you. This show's #1 for a reason, because I pester people to do these reviews. Please take a second, subscribe to the show so you get notified when we release episodes, which, by the way, we have a lot of quote unquote Easter egg episodes that I do not promote. They're just for subscribers. So subscribing is for free. So hit that follow button, give us 5 stars. And if you're on Apple, write that review. It takes 2 seconds to do it. That being said, I'm Omar Khateeb, your host and head of state for the State of MedTech. We will see you all next time. Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has an executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.